Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ron Benavides, and my partner and I will be going against our opponent's claim, which is the United States should abolish the use of the death penalty. Our main claim is that the United States should continue the use of the death penalty, and for us to support our claim, my significant claims are the death penalty saves money as a possible sentence for criminals, and two, it can be used as a deterrent for possible crimes. So to go into better depth into my first significant claim, which is the death penalty saves money as a possible sentence, it is true that the death penalty may be more expensive than life in prison. However, criminals may make a deal to plead guilty in order to avoid the cost of death penalty. I have a quote from Robert B. Edmond JD from procon.org, and he explains criminal defendants who are facing the death penalty, which today must be pleaded by prosecutors upfront, often want to make a deal by pleading guilty to first-degree murder in exchange for a sentencing recommendation of life without parole. The existence of the death penalty as a possible sentence leads to guilty pleas that save money spent on trials and limit opportunity for appeals. So, without the death penalty, the option of making a plea deal would practically be impossible, because the worst consequence of the criminal would be life in prison. Now we should further discuss the cost of the death penalty. Cost studies are actually often incomplete. I have a quote from the same source, Robert B. Edmond JD. He explains that claim cost studies often performed by or at the behest of death penalty opponents are frequently so incomplete as to be false and misleading. For example, they do not take into account the increase in the cost of life without parole cases if there were no death penalty. So this supports that the total cost of the death penalty may be inaccurate. Moving on to my second significant claim, which can be used as a deterrent for possible crimes. Criminals that get executed is known by the public. So when someone's executed and put on death row, after it's all done, they get is known by the public through the news, articles, and stuff like that. So potential criminals are scared to suffer the worst consequences. My quote from futureofworking.com better explains this by saying, if an offender commits a crime that is punishable by death and gets executed, this will be known by the public, including those who are potential criminals. For fear of suffering the same plight, they will be discouraged to commit crimes. And also, criminals will rethink their potential crimes. Another quote from deathpenaltycurriculum.org, if murderers are sentenced to death and executed, potential criminals will think twice before killing for fear of losing their own life. So this explains that the death penalty is an effective deterrent. And moving on to my parenting claims, which is one, the closure to the victims' families, and two, it is actually humane, clean, and safe. So again, to the death of the first one, death on the criminal will bring the person related to the victim closure, knowing that the criminal has been put down. I have two examples of this claim. First being Brooks Douglas, a victim of a family hostage in 2015. This is a direct quote from CNN News. From this case, when Brooks Douglas was a teenager, two men barged into his home, took his family hostage, raped his sister, and killed his parents in front of him. Years later, they became an Oklahoma State Senator. He became an Oklahoma State Senator and wrote the legislation that gave him the right to watch one of those men, Stephen Hatch, which was the criminal that committed this crime, to be executed. He said that seeing Hatch executed brought him a sense of closure. My second example comes from dispatch.com. Several friends and relatives of a woman and two children who were stabbed to death on Thanksgiving in 2010 couldn't contain their relief yesterday when a three-judge panel sentenced the killer to death. Another quote from dispatch.com. She felt comforted to know that he will be put to death, said Anita Hayes, which is Tia Hendricks' aunt, which was the victim that was murdered. She spoke on behalf of the mother. Some of the family also said that let him suffer in prison for the rest of his life. But I can't imagine what the death penalty is for if not for this, Hayes said. If the judges didn't give him death, we might as well go over the State House and tell him to abolish it. Now moving on to my second inheritance claim, which is humane claim. It is actually humane, clean, and safe. Lethal injection is planned to be painless, so there's no way that this can actually be inhumane if that is planned to deliver no pain to the criminal. Jeff Jacoby explains this on his website. He explains that for 25 years, lethal injections generally worked as intended, a standard 3-drug cocktail sedated and for anesthesia in the inmate, prevented convulsions, and stopped his heart. So this is planned to be painless and is not supposed to be delivered pain. Also, new drugs have been able to accomplish this painless death. An example of this would be Oklahoma, and Jeff Jacoby also explains this by saying Oklahoma is giving up on lethal injection and plans to move forward with a new form of execution, nitrogen gas inhalation. Over the next several months, the state will finalize protocols for imposing the death penalty with nitrogen. The method has never been used for putting death row convicts to death, though it's occasionally used for euthanizing animals and is recommended by some assisted suicide groups because, as one of them says, it is peaceful, quick, and requires no drugs. So as you can see, there are ways that this can be, if lethal injection doesn't seem to be painless, there are other ways of making it even more painless, as stated in the nitrogen gas inhalation example. Now, moving on to my solvency claim, which is continue the death penalty in order to reduce the number of committed crimes like murder and homicide. So, as you probably know, the death penalty is restricted for the worst of the worst crimes, and some of these crimes include, according to deathpenalty.procon.org, first-degree murder, murder of a foreign official, murder committed by the use of a firearm during a crime of violence or drug trafficking crime, assassination of president or vice president, rape and molestation, treason, and stuff like that. So as you can see, it is restricted for the worst of the worst crimes. And the death penalty would be able to reduce the number of crimes committed. In conclusion, for these reasons, me and my partner believe that the United States should continue the use of the death penalty. Thank you.